Welcome to the Diesel Podcast presented by DFC Diesel.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Diesel Queen podcast. Today I have on here Patrick with the Diesel Podcast. He has ran way more podcast episodes than me. He has a giant YouTube channel full of like hundreds of podcast episodes. So I have him on here as a guest today, and we're going to cover anything and everything diesel that we can think of. So, do you want to introduce yourself and kind of go over the history of your shit?
Yeah. So there's Patrick. Started doing the Diesel Podcast January of 2016. And the idea to do it came from just wanting to get some of the conversations that I'd have working in the industry out there to everybody. Like you go to a show and you might get to chat with the owner of a company or a racer and you have this great conversation, but there's only maybe a handful of people or maybe 5 people around. And there's such incredible knowledge and information and lessons. I thought this would be really cool to kind of put out there on YouTube and iTunes and Spotify and other places to let people like hear this information, hear these lessons. So that's how it started. And then 9 years later, we're still doing episodes and, talking with different people and influencers and racers and covering all the topics that are in diesel.
Racers like people we saw at the Ultimate Callout Challenge racers?
Yeah, we've had, I'm thinking back to the very first episodes, 9 years ago. And I kind of focused it on the racing side. So I had Levon on, I had Ryan Milliken, I had Dimitri was on, a whole bunch of people. And then through the years, as I think the industry has expanded, especially the race scene, it kind of focused in on like King of the Street Challenge, Ultimate Callout Challenge, some of these other ones, ODSS, and just talking with as many different people, as we can. So UCC is a huge one. I did some episodes with some of the competitors before they got there, and it's definitely one of my favorite events to cover because I think it's so real. Like a lot of these guys, they don't work in the industry. They don't have these huge companies. It's not like a marketing expense to build this truck. They do it out of passion because they love it with their friends and people local to them. And they build these incredible trucks that go out there making 2,000, 3,000 horsepower. It's really awesome.
Like 5-second quarter miles, which is ridiculous out of a freaking diesel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's cool. I just went to the Ultimate Callout Challenge for the first time, and I've been trying to hit a diesel event for literally the last 10 years. And when I lived in Colorado, Wyoming area, I really wanted to go to Diesel on the Mountain, which is I don't even know if that's going on anymore because all the subdivisions below Thunder Valley started bitching and hold on, motherfucker, diesel. Never. My Pikachu plushie was about to become a victim. Don't touch it. But Thunder Valley, I've heard rumor that Thunder Valley got shut down because of all the subdivisions that were below it, and obviously, they weren't too thrilled about the Lucas Oil, Mile High Nationals with the Top Fuel dragsters and the Diesel on the Mountain and the dirt bike MX Pro races and stuff that were going on up there. So I never got to make it to that. So I finally made it to the Ultimate Callout Challenge this year, and it was fun. They're faster than I thought they would be. I thought I was going to be seeing 11 or 12-second quarter mile trucks. I did not realize that they were going to be half that.
Hey, Diesel fans, I wanted to let you guys know that our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 40% off MSRP code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code 25TDP40, get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, different handle designs, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So we really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. If you're in the market, head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code 25TDP40 to get 40% off MSRP. What's so cool about events, to tell a bit of a story, is I grew up in Denver, and Bandimere Speedway was just right outside of town. And they used to have, I think it was called Rocky Mountain Truck Fest or Truck Fest or something. This is like 2008, 9, 10, around there. And I wasn't even into diesels. I didn't work in the industry. I was in something completely different. And one of my friends was like, hey, let's go check out this. They race trucks down there. So we went. And I sat in the stands. It's like, I think it was in August, so it's super hot. You get sunburned, everything else. But I saw these trucks racing, and one of them was, I think, from Choate Diesel. And I don't know who owns the truck now, or maybe they still do, but it was like a second gen. It was red with green flames on the side, and I heard it. And it was this incredible sound of it staging, racing down the track. ATS was there, a bunch of other people, and that hooked me so much back in 2008 that it stuck with me, and later on I decided I wanted to do that as a career. So you never know who's in the stands, who's watching, who's paying attention, and then what it can foster. And I think that's what always draws me to something like UCC or King of the Street Challenge or some of the other events that are around the country, is you can really inspire people to either build a truck, build a career, invest their time and effort into something. It's really powerful.
Well, the diesel community is awesome too. For the most part, it's not full of a bunch of assholes. For the most part, all the companies are great. I haven't met a lot of the racers personally, but for the most part, like all these major companies that are supplying a lot of these parts for these trucks are pretty good people. And I mean, I always liked the, Bandimere Speedway Mile High Nationals. I went to that almost every year for like 5 years in a row. And I mean, obviously I started in diesel, but I didn't realize the amount of power and speed that they were getting out of these trucks. Like the first time I saw Brittany Force race in the Mile High Nationals, I was like in love. But like I always wanted to be like, now I want to be the girl version of, or the diesel version of Brittany Force, but I don't have the fucking money to do that. But they're cool and I love it. I don't know. I like high horsepower. One run annihilates every EPA attempt of Priuses for the last year. I love it. It's just redneck and I love it.
I thought of a question to ask you. I'm really curious of your opinion on it. So when we look at trucks like, say, the Ultimate Callout Challenge that just happened, and most of these trucks are between 2,000, 3,000 horsepower and over that. And you think of the money that it takes and the time to build something like that. And even the network, a lot of these guys, they have friends and they have sponsors. It's a whole endeavor. When you think back to the older days where like 1,000 horsepower at, say, Bandimere Speedway or some of these other places, it was expensive, but it was more attainable. Do you think there's been a separation in the crowd with enthusiasts of what is attainable to them? And do you think it affects their enthusiasm for racing because they might see, this $250,000 truck with this huge trailer and all these parts and think that's a huge investment. I'm going to go invest in a home or invest in a business or something else. I'm not going to spend it with that truck. Versus before, you'd get a built transmission, compound turbo, some injectors, a tune, go race at the track and, run a 10-second quarter mile.
Well, yeah, before, I mean, you were in the pretty the top class of the diesel industry. Like you said, if you were running 1,000 horsepower, I mean, if you had 2 turbos, you were hot shit. If things like that, if you had one of those flap shift, like 2-stage, like whatever they're called, race transmissions, you were hot shit. Nowadays, I mean, the motherfuckers got like 4 goddamn turbos on them and it's insane. Like it's something that like I make okay money for myself and I could not afford to build a truck like that on top of owning the house that I own, on top of having horses, on top of having I literally am into like every expensive fucking hobby on the planet, hunting, like all this stuff. Like it pretty much have to consume, like I'd have to rent like a very small house or buy a small house and dump literally every spare penny I had into the truck, which I mean, I'm all for money pits, but yeah, I think that separates a lot of people because now it's getting to the point where people are starting to put money into them almost to the point where some of these top fuel dragsters are. And normal people can't afford that. It's too insane, or they don't have the skills for it either. I mean, I like it because it's still cool and it's still fun to see. I still like tractor pulls. I still like all that stuff, but it's definitely like it has gone from something to where like, oh, I can build a truck like that to, well, I mean, I could, but I don't have the money and I am not big enough to get all the sponsors for that. Like I have sponsors for some things, like Industrial Injection's been helping me out and Synergy's been helping me out and a couple of other like Air Dog things like that. But as far as trying to get enough sponsors to sponsor like enough of the build to be able to do it, there's no way. I mean, hopefully in the future that would be cool. But some of these people, I don't even know how they do it because they have like no followers on social media at all. So they have it's not like they have a sway or a pull with these companies of like, hey, I can advertise for you. I have a large audience, which would make sense. They don't even have the following, which not that following is everything, but so then how do they get these sponsors?
Yeah.
Like I don't understand how they're doing it, and either that or I guess running the trucks and traveling everywhere, I guess, and having people see the logos on the side. But I mean, even Industrial Injection, they had their fan truck at the races, and that's all it was. Is they pulled a dyno run on it at like 2,200 horsepower, but it was just the fan dyno. And if that's what the fan dyno trucks are pulling, like, there's no way I could compete with the actual competitors. There's no way.
Yeah, it's been. I feel like I was maybe asleep at the wheel with it because I was so focused on content and talking with people and parts that I think along the way I kind of lost some of that passion that I had early on, which would to me was with a diesel truck is I could tow with it, I could haul with it, I could use it for work, I could travel, it could be a grocery getter. But then I could also do some upgrades along the way to be able to make 500, 600 horsepower, 1,200 foot-pounds of torque, 1,300 foot-pounds, take it to test and tunes, have fun with it. So it's kind of this do-all vehicle, and I love that versus having a dedicated race car or something else and trying to balance that. And I think along the way, I think emissions and DPFs and EGRs and that whole situation has definitely impacted the market. But then I kind of sit back sometimes. I'm like, would I really want to modify a truck that much? Would I be happy, running this particular class when I don't have the money to build a 3,000 horsepower truck? I don't have the network. I don't have the support staff. I don't have the travel time. So how far along do I want to go with it? And I think that's kind of an unknown in kind of the enthusiast circle is how can I still have fun in this without feeling like I'm not doing anything because somebody's out there making 3,500 horsepower or whatever it is. And here I am at 1,100 or 1,200 and it doesn't compare and my times don't compare. So I think that's kind of an unknown, something I'm really kind of curious to see how it shakes out in the future.
Well, what they need to do is, and as it gains traction, they probably will be able to, is have classes set up more like the Top Fuel and the NHRA events. Because they have everything from like what they call stock class, which we all know is not really stock, but it's close to stock-ish kind of, like all the way from like pro stock all the way up to the Top Fuel funny cars. And so there's a lot more classes that you can compete in. But, once you start getting down to like, I'm scared that the diesel world is going to start getting into the NHRA world. And I was kind of like, I know quite a bit about it. I've been out of it for a few years, but I mean, just the like minimum requirements you have to even run one of those cars down the track is insane. Like the roll bar has specific type of welds you have to have in there. And the engine has to be a very specific. And that's what the problem comes to be is once you start getting enough people in the classes and stuff like that, you end up having to make very, very strict guidelines and regulations for each class, which will either limit some people. And what I always was worried about is, well, my skills, I could build something that's like not really stock, but not really pro stock, but it would be in between, but there's nothing in between. It's not going to qualify for the stock class, but it's not even going to be remotely competitive in the pro stock classes. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's hard. I mean, I like the diesel events as a spectator, but I would love to be like a millionaire and just dump a fuckload of money into a truck, but I can't do that because I had the same concept of you. Like, I have three Cummins trucks, and I want all of them to be able to tow. This one's actually too tall. I love big lifted trucks, but I did not actually choose to lift this one this high. So, like this one, obviously, I want to be able to tow with it, but my main tow rig is my dually, and I want to be able to still use them as trucks.
Yeah.
And I mean, at least the race trucks are, and some people are going to be so mad at me for this, for saying this, but this is opinion. Um, at least the race trucks have a purpose and they have a functionality of racing. What drives me insane about some of these events, which is why I refuse to go to just truck shows, is literally pavement queen. Literally, the rims are so big that if you drove down a dirt road with it, you would bend a rim. Like the thing doesn't, like they dump 200-300 grand into these fucking trucks with custom suspension, custom lifts, custom interiors, custom paint, custom engine, all this shit, and it literally sits at a show. I don't get it. I know that's like kind of off topic, but like I understand wanting something to look cool and look pretty, and I totally get it. But you will never catch me dead in a truck that I'm scared to drive because it's pretty. It's one thing if I'm scared to drive it daily because it's literally a fucking monster. Anybody that tells you that they daily drive anything over like, especially cars, like anything over like 800 horsepower hates their fucking life. Those cars are cool to take like with your buddy, or those trucks, like all these trucks that are making insane horsepower. Like it'd be cool to go cruise around with sometimes, but you're going to hate your fucking life trying to drive that to work every day.
Oh yeah.
Because it's going to be fucking loud. It's going to drive like, honestly, they drive like shit because they're made to launch and go. They're not made to, stoplights and things. But not that I would pose it, but
I actually think that is on topic because utility is, I think, kind of the sweet spot of the market right now. And I don't want to be negative, like we can't afford a 3,000 horsepower truck, so why am I going to get into it? Like that really, it's not entirely true. I think the utility and the technology is there in it. Like you mentioned the show trucks. Like, yeah, I would be afraid to take that on a dirt road or someplace and, bend a wheel or, get paint chips or something like that. But then, like you mentioned, you have a truck with a lot of power. It's not fun to drive. It's going to drone. If you get snow where you live, you're not going to take it out. Like the utility isn't quite there. And I think the market is in that utility spot. It might be because I'm getting older. I think back to when I was a kid and I wanted like a big turbo and like all this cool stuff. And my dad would be like, why do you need all that? You just need a truck that starts and runs. And I thought he was just an old guy. Well, now I'm like getting older and I'm like, I see the allure of that. Like I want it to start. I want to put hundreds of thousands of miles on it. I want to limit the expense that I have for downtime or transmission repairs or whatever it might be. And that's where I think the diesel industry, and I think it's come from the racing side, has really advanced so fast with technology. When we think of the kind of turbos that are out there, the kind of tuning that's out there, the kind of quality with torque converters and clutch packs and hydraulic upgrades that they're doing and suspension and injectors, injection pumps, it's incredible versus the old days where it was just like somebody had an idea in a shop, welded something up, and then it's like on a website and you can buy it for like $250 or, you get this tune and, you don't know how qualified the tuning is. It's not like that anymore. It's very sophisticated. And I think that part of the market is definitely benefiting from things like Ultimate Callout Challenge and the drive that these racers, engine companies, turbo companies, injector companies have put together to fuel 3,000 horsepower. You're going to learn so much during that R&D process, like how great our 90 horsepower injector is going to be, or 100% over is going to be, how great our CP3s or injection pumps, they're going to get better.
Well, yeah, there's definitely like the aftermarket world has, some things are way extreme and have no place in with anyone that actually dailies their vehicles. But there's a lot of it, like AirDog and Fass, for example. They make those fuel pumps, those aftermarket fuel pumps. I have one in every single truck in this shop. And that is an incredibly like genius fucking idea because the lift pumps on these Dodges are trash, specifically the second gens. And everybody loves to blame the VP44 for actually the VP44 failures are an effect of the lift pump being shitty, not a cause of their fuel problems. So where the aftermarket companies come in with that stuff, I think is great. Industrial injection makes a lot of really awesome upgrades, or even things like it is so freaking hard to find legitimate OEM replacement injectors that are actually Bosch injectors. And especially for these common rails, if you don't get a good set of injectors, it's gonna have, I mean, you're gonna get problems with it almost immediately. And so companies like that are trying to help out with, you know, normal daily stuff. Well, even this truck doesn't have oversized injectors, which I probably could get away with it. But the very first truck I built was a maroon truck sitting right over there. And that one I built on very little money. It took me 6 months to I had to buy everything one at a time as I could afford it, and then save up for the machine work in it. And I bought a cheap rebuild kit, which was such a bad idea, which is hence why it's been sitting there for 3 years. But I put an edge tuner on it. It has 104-pound valve springs. It has 75 horse injectors. It has a stage 3 Colt cam. It has the exhaust port and polished. What else does it have? There's something else in there that it's been 7 years since I've touched that or built that engine. But I was super happy with just those things. Just those things made a massive difference in that truck. The only problem I had with those is, well, when you live in Wyoming and it's -40 outside, larger injectors and a bigger camshaft do not do you any justice. They don't do any good for you. It made it a lot harder to start because obviously the bigger camshaft is allowing more cold air in, which is a problem. And then the fuel injectors are overfueling it on top of that. So even with the edge tuner, they have a defuel before it warms up kind of thing. It helps a little bit, but you can take a daily drivable truck and make it harder to daily drive pretty easy, and you wouldn't even realize it. That truck is a towing fucking machine, and it runs beautifully unless it's 40 degrees, below zero. If it's below zero, good luck. Yeah. I mean, when you do start it, it's idling at 500 RPM, and it is chugging smoke out the exhaust, and it does that for 10 minutes. I have another one right next to it, which is my 2002 3500, which is a silver truck. And that one is bone stock. And it's amazing how much better that one starts in the winter than my maroon truck ever did. So
it definitely gets tough. And I think those older trucks, this is another sort of topic that I'm really curious how things unfold. We talked about events, and when you think of performance, what's some of the first trucks that come to mind when you think of this is a great platform to build power with? It's probably a Cummins 3rd gen, maybe a 2nd gen. Some people think of an LB7 or LBZ or some of that stuff, or 6 liters have come on really strong. I know some of the 7.3 stuff, like Brian Jellick and some of these other people are doing crazy things with these trucks. And when I think about the future, I kind of look at it, I guess, from that that utility perspective. And I think of these older trucks, they're dwindling. They're not made anymore. Every year there's probably, I don't know how many are lost to age or wrecks or rust or whatever there might be. And I think about how sophisticated the diesel industry has become. I did an episode recently with Fleece Performance. They gave me a shop tour. The robotics and the automation in there is insane. How they make compressor wheels, how they do their electronics. And I think, okay, when is the market going to shift to the newer ones? The millions of 6.7 Power Strokes that are out there, the millions of 6.7 Cummins, the millions of L5Ps and LMLs and everything that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, they can't really. It's harder.
Yes.
So people I don't know if you were aware of this or not, probably if you've done a million of podcasts, not to cut you off. I just ADD brain, something popped in my head. There's a lot of people that were starting to heavily modify the engine components of some of these newer trucks. And the people that really started doing that and making it a popular thing to do was the Diesel brothers. Everybody knows who they are. Well, they got hit very fucking hard with EPA shit because they were removing aftermarket system, like after treatment systems. They were, removing EGR systems. They were basically rendering the entire after treatment and entire emission systems on these trucks obsolete. And so now, because of things like that, and because of lawsuits like that, and because of, not to get political, but it really does depend on who the president is at the time and what the political things are doing. The last, I don't know, solid 10 years at least, we've had a pretty hard hit on the aftermarket system of trucks and the aftermarket sales of things like exhaust. So the reason people still really focus on these trucks and these older trucks is because there's way less emissions to fuck with. And a lot of people in a lot of states, if they have a newer vehicle that already has after treatment, not only is it insanely expensive to get delete kits for like exhaust filters and stuff like that, but they have to live in a state that doesn't have emissions. Where these old trucks like I have, I could literally just unplug my tuner and it'll meet emissions. Even with all the other shit done to it, it would probably still meet emissions. So I think that's why people gravitate towards the older trucks, because there's way less to fuck with. Yeah. And EPA is really starting to crack down on aftermarket companies. So
I agree.
Not to cut you off.
Well, I agree 100%. And I think as far as an industry, I just wonder how sustainable that is. How sustainable it is for companies. I'm not talking necessarily enthusiasts, but like companies to focus on 20 to 30-year-old trucks long term. And I think the issue is exactly like you said, is there are upgrades for emissions equipped trucks. There are parts and turbos and injection pumps and tuning that are available for them. But I come back to that utility spot. Like, I don't think most people are looking to build a UCC level truck out of a 2023 6.7 Power Stroke. But what they want is reliability. They want the longevity with it. And it's like, it's so, I guess it's frustrating in a way, because these new trucks are light years better than the older ones from a technology standpoint, from so many different aspects. But you have that ceiling on them, and you have that question in the back of your mind: is it going to be reliable? When is my CP4 going to go out? When is my EGR going to get clogged or plugged? If I idle too much, am I going to plug my DPF? Am I even going to be able to clean it? If I got to buy one, how much is it going to cost? Am I going to be able to get it? That is what I'm really curious about in the future, how that is going to shake out, because I think the aftermarket in the diesel industry is going to heavily depend on these millions and millions of Ford, GM, and Ram trucks that came equipped with emissions on them. And so I'm hoping somehow, some way, and I know it's very complex, like you mentioned, political things and other sides of it, is how can we breathe life into this huge 15 plus year range of trucks that are going to be the next generation of what we modify and upgrade and want for utility.
I mean, the only way to really do that is to try to find a way to have a little bit of lax on emissions, because if you even do anything that gives your truck a check engine light, which we all know there's a lot of things that will cause a check engine light but doesn't affect performance, like even that will be denied in emissions, and that's a hard thing. And as much as I would love to see some of these new trucks, I love the interiors of them. I think the interiors are nice. Obviously, they're already building like stock. They just keep building more and more horsepower stock. Part of that is to offset the emissions in it, because emissions do suck horsepower. I don't care what the EPA wants to tell you. The emissions does suck a little bit of horsepower out of these engines. No engine is going to run better with old exhaust being routed back into the intake to be reburned. That's just science. But I would love to see, like, I've got a friend here, not a friend. My friend has a son here, and they just bought it's a 2015 Dodge, and it is fully deleted, straight pipe kit, sounds fucking beautiful. looks beautiful. I mean, the kid put gangster wheels on it, but it's still cool, right? Like it started out really nice. He's rapidly going to do enough burnouts to make it not nice anymore, but he's a kid. He's like 17, but it's beautiful and I love it. And I'd love to have one, but it's like, man, that is insane. It is insanely expensive to get a truck that is like a 2015 like that. It's insanely expensive to delete all that stuff, have the tuning properly. And then if, when you tune something to delete it and you put that tune on there, then you can't run any other tuners. You can't mess with anything else on it because then it's going to mess with the tune for that delete. So anything that you do for electronics wise in the future, you have to have that in mind kind of when you do the delete. So like if you want an edge tuner, let's say, you kind of got to like work with the company, be like, hey, when you program my ECU, it needs to be able to like do this stuff and deal with this tuner, because if you try and do anything else with it, it's going to mess up that tune. And if you mess up that tune, then the truck doesn't run. And there's so many fucking variables. And back to like you were saying, reliability, like, yes, does emissions have like more parts, which means there's more room for error? Yes. But all these deleted things, like all it's going to take is your programming to have one little issue or one little thing, and it's going to shut the entire truck down. So it can have an opposite effect. I had this little off topic, but when I worked at Deere, there was a customer that had a deleted excavator. And we were not supposed to touch it, but we did anyways. And we started running into issues as the dealership. He started having these weird codes because just like some of these trucks, there's like certain temperatures and readings that are not actually a sensor reading. They're a calculation of multiple sensors. So I think this particular machine had a problem with intake air temperature. And believe it or not, that's not just an intake air temperature sensor. That actually pulls data from like 3 other sensors on this machine to calculate that. And 2 of those are fucking unplugged because it was deleted. So I told the guy, I'm like, I can't mess with this because if I start getting into your computer with our program, I'm going to mess up your tune. And this excavator isn't even going to be able to leave the shop because right now it doesn't know it's deleted. But what happens when I start messing with it and then it does, and then it shuts completely off? Then you got to call your tuner guy to come here and fix it. And, he was kind of irritated with some of that because as a dealership, we couldn't touch it. There were some things we couldn't fix with it. And, finally he listened and he took the machine back to his tuner and the tuner got that fixed. It was an issue with the tune. But and that's what I always tell people is if you're going to buy a truck that has emissions that's deleted, or you're going to delete it yourself, you need to be prepared for things like this. You need to be prepared for the expenses. You need to be prepared for not every shop is going to be able to touch this. You're not going to be able to take it to a dealership anymore. You're like, if you can't work on it yourself and repair it yourself, or you don't have the money to hire shops that can, it's going to be, it has the potential of being a giant money pit and a giant problem. So,
it's so scary.
I'm all for deletes, but people need to be prepared for that.
What's so, I think, scary about it from like a truck owner perspective is I've done a ton of episodes with like on emissions. I've had a lawyer on who represents clients against the EPA with their cases. I've had Corey Willis from PPEI on. I've had Ryan Milliken from Hardway Performance. I've had tons of tuners on. And it's kind of, there's a couple different sides of it. Is one, like when these tuners or a business has a case and they come to terms with it, they can no longer support the previous tuning that they did. And they don't even do it anymore. So you have these incredibly knowledgeable people, these established businesses that have customer service departments, shipping departments. They have a hierarchy. If you have a problem to deal with, they don't touch the stuff anymore. And then through the conversations that I've had with a lawyer, like he's had clients that have spent 6 months in federal prison. They have felonies now. They can't vote. They can't own guns. They can't do a lot of different things. And so it's totally changed the market to the point that it's like, where do you go if you need help? And I think it's ultimately a testament to, again, the utility we talked about. Is I think most people just want their truck to run. They want it to be reliable. They would like to get 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 miles out of their newer Power Stroke, Cummins, or Duramax. But these systems that are on there, they're not designed to last that long. And if you have to replace or fix them, it's extremely expensive. I don't even know what a new DPF goes for now, but I know it's in the thousands. It's probably really expensive. And so
$10,000 for one filter on an excavator. So I'm assuming a truck is probably $5 or $6 grand just for the DPF. And then you have 2 other filters. So
yeah. So you have, like, as a truck owner, so you buy this $105,000 truck, you have this, you keep it stock, you drive it, you have issues with it. And then who knows, a year, 3 years, 4 years, 8 years down the road, somebody says, well, your DPF's clogged, I need $5 or $6 grand from you. And they feel like they're saddled with this responsibility themselves. It's out of warranty. There is no warranty on it. There's nothing you can do besides put a new one back on. And I think that is really, I think it's scary as a truck buyer, to think, what am I getting into? Who is doing the tuning? Corey Willis spent a lot of time chatting with me about the kind of tuning that's on the market now, because all the major players have either been contacted or they said, we're not doing this. So where are they coming from? How validated is it? What kind of data is there? Is it, is it as refined as, say PPEI's emissions on tuning? I don't know. I would just be taking a guess, and it's just kind of like an unknown market. And I think that drives to that kind of gravitation towards an older truck. Because if I have a 5.9 common rail, there's hundreds of places I could have tune it. There's tons of, I could do data logs, send it to them. They can figure out what's going on. It's so much easier. But I'm worried about these trucks getting older and older and older and dwindling each year. And I think of the whole diesel aftermarket in general and thinking, how does it evolve to be able to support however many millions of trucks came with that kind of stuff. So hopefully there's a solution or a process or something that takes place with them, because these new trucks just have so much potential. What they tow stock is incredible. If you compare it to a 3rd gen 5.9, what they're rated to do, the power that they have, there's a lot of cool things in them, but you have a system on it that might not last that long.
Yeah, well, and then deleting it is a whole nother problem in itself, and getting rid of it. Like 5 or 6 years ago, everyone was deleting their shit. But now it's like you said, the EPA's cracked down on people so hard for stuff like that it's especially the companies that supply these tunes and supply these deletes. Like, states like Wyoming, I think people get away with it because, well, it's Wyoming. But yeah, it's a problem. And the only thing that I can foresee is that, like, if I was going to make a company myself today and I wanted to not only supply parts for the old trucks, but also support the new trucks, I really feel like it's unfortunate to have to say this, but I'm going to stick with cosmetics. Pretty things. Let me make your engine bay pretty, right? A pretty air horn, or a pretty radiator hoses, or maybe a higher flow radiator, or I would like, and that's exactly what it's coming to, though, is these companies are not touching with a 10-foot pole anything that involves the emissions problems. For the newer trucks. So I was in the Dodge dealership. This blew my mind. I don't know if it's going to blow your mind, but I was in the Dodge dealership because I buy a lot of my shit from Dodge, and they had a 2025 truck in there, and it had injectors that went out.
Wow.
And it's under warranty, but would you like to take a guess on how much one injector cost?
One.
$2,000,
$2,500.
Not even close.
For just one, like 3 or 4.
For just one.
3 or 4,000.
Not even close.
It can't be close to 10.
It was $12,000 an injector because they're brand new and they don't have stock for it.
Wow.
I think it was something. It was 10 or 12 grand per injector. And all I could think of was, thank fucking God for those people that it was under warranty. Because my God, you may as well buy a new truck for that. And they're like, I didn't believe him at first. I'm like, there's no fucking way. There's no way. Come on. There's no way. The truck is not even, like, what the fuck? And he is like, well, it's brand new. We don't really have any in stock. So yeah, that's how much they cost. I'm like, that is fucking ridiculous. So not only are we getting more expensive stuff bolted onto our trucks that we don't want, like after treatment and stuff like that. But then just the normal components like injectors and turbos and things like that are skyrocketing in price. And it's going to make it so the average daily person, like if you want to own a diesel, you better buy a diesel, run it till it's out of warranty, and trade it in for another one, because you're not going to be able to afford to fucking fix it. I mean, just the difference, if you think of the difference between my second gen and my third gen, right? A set of injectors for my second gen is like, for really expensive ones, it's like $1,200 for all of them. Maybe. You can get it like an average set for like $600. This truck is like fucking $700 a piece. Like for really good injectors, $350 for the average, right? Per injector. So it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So, unfortunately.
Well, the thing with it too is these trucks, like, I don't know what percentage of people don't really modify their trucks or might just do a couple things. I would venture to say it's probably 99% of all of them. And think of how they're used. Like, they're used in construction, they're used in trades, they're used in so many different parts of the economy that being able to afford repairs or being able to keep it on the road, you're right, it's getting harder and harder and harder. And especially even just finding some of the components with, I mean, we saw in 2020 and 2021 how, like, the supply chain, how messed up that got, how hard it was to get things. And, you know, like, I was driving around the other day, and, like, I guess to step back, when I was a kid, I only saw diesel trucks like used in trades, like construction companies, sometimes like government, you know, vehicles or road work, things like that. And I was driving around the other day, and I drove by this country club, and there was a beautiful, like, newer style lifted Power Stroke that was like double parked in the corner, right? And I'm like, you know, I think the ownership has changed, and I think the OEMs know that. Like, you compare the interior of a third gen, which is my favorite truck, by the way, so I'm not trashing them, but like a third gen 5.9, the interior of that compared to a 2025 Ram, they're night and day difference. It's like an office. It's like an office. Like, they have everything that you would want in there, and I think they know that. I think they know, like, what the owners or what the buyers of those trucks want, and it's different than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where it was a work truck. It's something you're going to put a ton of miles on, use for work, make some money, build America, do all that kind of stuff. And now it's like there's all these plugins for your smartphone and cameras and sensors and all these different things. It's just, it's so different and expensive. And I just hope that stays there, because it really does. Diesel drives so many parts of the economy. You know better than I do with equipment and things like that. Like, it's so crucial to the economy and people's lives.
Well, everything. And that's what I've tried to explain to people, because I've had some people try to argue with me and like, well, what does the price of diesel have to do with anything? Because I drive a gas car. And it's like, but you're forgetting that all the farmers that grow your food run diesel. All those tractors are diesel. All their semis are diesel. The process of transporting that to the production facility is diesel. Everything that transports it from the production facility to the stores is also diesel. So it's just this big giant snowball effect when you start thinking about like what actually runs on diesel. And I hate to say it, like the actual science behind the emissions of diesels in general. And I could get into the nerdy part of it, of like the cylinder temperatures versus what causes NOx and what makes it lower, what makes it higher. I could get into that. But the general consensus is, and the general part to take away with this is, diesels actually have better emissions ratings than gas vehicles just on their own. So part of the reason that people really started cracking down on diesel emissions, not only is I don't think people understand how many trucks, semis, equipment are diesel, but nobody likes the black. Well, I do. Most people don't like the black smoke, right? Yeah. And everybody saw the black smoke and they're like, oh, we have to get rid of it. So then we create this freaking ridiculous system to get rid of, like, not only lower the NOx, which I can understand, But the DPF filter, literally the only purpose, so the DPF and the DOC filter or the DOC are right next to each other. They're in the same filter canister most of the time. The DOC is what helps remove NOx from the air. The literal only purpose of the DPF is to remove the smoke and the particulate matter. It's literally the only purpose. And then after that, it goes into the SCR, which is the DEF system. And there's two more filters. One's the SCR, and I don't remember what the other filter acronym is, but it basically further. So one filter, you spray the exhaust with DEF, and then one filter further reacts with the DEF and further reduces the NOx. The next filter reduces the smell of the fucking DEF. So like we just have this like compound shit of shit we don't even need, and it's bullshit. But I don't know where I was going with that initially. Kind of got off on a tangent there. Like, but the systems and the exhaust systems on these machines and these trucks, like the whole initial purpose of it was, oh well, we don't like black smoke. And now we have the DOC, DPF, the SCR, all this DEF, all this other bullshit, EGR, all this crap, which actually works against it, by the way. Not to nerd out on you too much, but EGR, when you burn EGR, it actually lowers the cylinder temperatures. Which guess what that does? It creates more particulate matter, because the lower the cylinder temperatures, the less NOx you create, but the more particulate matter you create. The higher the cylinder temperature, the more NOx you create. So literally, it's just this giant clusterfuck of a system that is just like one thing is fixing one problem, and then they have to have another component that fixes the problem that one creates. And it's just this giant fucking problem, all because people don't like the look of black smoke. And now we've found out that, I don't know if you've heard this, but in Europe, they're not. So we are in the United States, we are on tier 4, final tier 4 emissions is what they call it, which is what the DEFs is. The interim tier 4 was just the DPF DOC. The final tier 4 is the DPF DOC, and then all of the DEF bullshit. In Europe, they're now in tier 5 because what they figured out was the 0.001 particulate matter that is making it out of the exhaust is actually worse for you than the bigger particulate matter was, because our lungs can't fucking filter it because it's so small. So what they've learned is all this work that we did to get rid of the black smoke, that was actually better for our breathing than the tiny bit of emissions that's coming out of it now in the particulate matter, because it's so small our lungs can't filter it. So where's it going to end? Where is this clusterfuck ball of shit going to end? That's my question.
Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock, or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it, with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is, sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have, from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increase power, increase torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time. A lot of them are in stock or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do, something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. I don't know. I had another guest on and they were talking about I saw something about gas DPFs and how that is something. Yeah, it's coming. I don't know if it's in Europe yet, but there's a technology to put a DPF on a gas vehicle.
But there's no particulate matter in a gas vehicle.
I don't know what they call it something different, but it's a filter in this like next generation or this future generation. I don't know what it was, but he was telling me about that being something that is real. It's being researched and that sort of stuff. And we transitioned over to electric vehicles and we were talking about those. And we're talking about the batteries and the mining and how do you dispose of them and the fire hazard and all these things. It's like, what is the future going to be? Because like you mentioned, you have these diesel trucks with all these filters, all these things. You have the expense, the complexity of it. I use air quotes, but you can't take the stuff off. And they've made an example of enough businesses and enough people that, they're not going to either work on them or do things like that. And then you have emissions with gas vehicles or those potentially changing. And then you have, it's just like, it's so confusing. It's actually hard I can't cover it all. I only focus on the diesel side, but it's like, what is the future of being an automotive enthusiast look like? Like, what are we going to have? What are we going to have 10, 20, 30 years from now? What is it going to be? Because it's a huge part of our culture. We think back to like the muscle car days and hot rod days and all that sort of stuff. And then diesel goes right along with that. And it's just like, we love our vehicles. We love to have fun with them. We love to customize. We love to make them our own. And I just don't know where this all leads.
I don't know, but I don't think it looks good for anyone, and like people can cry at my face all they want, but to your point, electric vehicles are not better because yes, the actual vehicle itself is not creating any emissions, but the process of building that and the process for the power for that and supplying the power for that is all contributing to the bullshit that we call environmental problems. So there's really no actual clean way of making a vehicle. And I don't even want to live long enough to where we get to the point where we have an emissions free vehicle, because what's the fucking fun in that? And not to sound like, I don't know, bad, like anti whatever, but like, I like my V8s. I like the sound that my diesel engine makes when it's straight piped and I put my foot to the floor. I don't know if I really want to be around when none of those are around anymore and everything is just whatever hydrogen burning, whatever, which I mean, I could get into a whole conspiracy theory about that, about why we don't have things like that, but I'm not going to, because this is, but
well, we've seen a change in the market. Like just a few years ago, Dodge had that EV charger, right? And then they stopped making the Hemi V8. Now they brought the Hemi V8 back, and the consumers want those choices out there. And so I don't know.
Dodge did that on purpose.
I'm
almost certain they did that on purpose. You're not going to convince me that a company that wanted to put a fucking Hellcat in a minivan was like, oh, we're going to comply and build an electric only vehicle from now on. No, I think they did that on purpose to boost sales of the cars they already had, then didn't make a V8 for 1 year? And then it was like, oh, hey, we're coming back. And then the sales are going to go through the roof again because people are going to be like, oh, when are they going to stop making them again? I feel like that was literally, that's what we need, those. We need more companies like Dodge that just says, we don't even care. We're going to make something that meets emissions, but it's going to be a ridiculous amount of horsepower. Like, that's what we need, is more things like that. But
that was always cool. Like, that was, when you think back to like at the time, I don't know how great the performance would be like by today's standards, but you think of like the 454 SS like Silverado or the Cyclone or like the '03, '04 Mustang Cobras. Like these things that would come out of the OEMs were they were just really cool, and it's it's just that I think it's that enthusiast side that like what you talked about. You love your V8s. You love hearing the sound. People love that aspect to it. So I just hope that on the diesel side of it, that we're still talking about upgrading diesel trucks 10 years from now, and maybe we're talking about it in a different light with some of these newer ones. It's been really interesting for me. Like when I got into this, it was around 2008, 2009. It's so different now than what it used to be, and it changes so fast. And I'm sure you see it like with your career, and now doing a podcast and in these events. It's just a rapidly evolving industry that there's not a lot of answers for the future, and it's tough.
And even in the OEM side of it, like I said, I got my start in heavy equipment. I worked as a heavy equipment mechanic for John Deere for almost 8 years, about 7.5 years. And just the changes that I saw in those 7 years. And then even then, like they made a bunch of different changes to them already that I'm not even aware of because I've been out of John Deere for about 3 years. And I don't know. I hope we don't lose, especially because we are America. I hope we don't lose the freedom of being able to own what we want to own and drive what we want to drive. And because that's really the only way. Like if you really wanted to cut out all emissions altogether, you'd have to have some form of a vehicle that doesn't use electricity or any type of oil, right? Oil and gas, anything like that, diesel, anything like that, which there are actually like, what are they called? Natural gas engines, but those are still using natural gas. We'd have to have something, but like at that point, if you really like, I'm worried that once they do find, I already think they did, and the oil and gas industry won't let us have it. But once we cross that line of like, okay, we're going to have this, I'm scared that they're going to force fuck everyone to have it. And then you're not going to be able to have anything else. Like, I mean, look at California. You literally have to have a piece of like, if you want to drive an old truck like mine or like a really old semi, you literally have to have a piece of paper that proves that there's nostalgia. Like it was my grandfather's or some bullshit. And in California, they are already forcing everyone. If you buy diesel in California, it's mixed. It's already pre-mixed with biodiesel, which sounds modern and good. But most of the vehicles on the road aren't even made for that. So it's actually damaging to the engine components because it's not designed for that. On top of the fact that my dad told me the percentage of biodiesel they're running is like 20 or 25%. John Deere themselves only has a maximum recommendation of like 12% biodiesel. And it's that way for a reason. They have a maximum, percentage of biodiesel mixture for a reason. The fuel is a lubricating part of the diesel or of the fuel system. The fuel itself is lubricating. We already have problems because we switched from normal diesel to ultra low sulfur diesel fuel. That already created problems. And I don't know if many people are aware of this, but all these old trucks like 2002, like all those old trucks, they are not designed to run on ultra low sulfur diesel fuel. So if you really wanted to make sure you extended the life of your components, you would have to run an additive for it because they're not designed. The sulfur is actually what lubricates the fuel system, but we cut that out. So now we have problems with fuel systems on older trucks. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that again, but yeah.
I think it comes down to like at the beginning when I was chatting about like why I do a podcast. It's ultimately because I like to help people. And I the way that I chose to do that was through education and conversation and like the transfer of information, right? And so what really is at the heart of it, and like it's at the heart of our conversation today, is most of the enthusiasts, most people, they don't have a voice, right? They don't have a platform to speak out on. They don't have a way to express frustration or challenges that they have. And I think about the people that have, like that 2025 Ram with its $12,000 for one single injector. Well, how many people have had a horrible experience because their DPF went out, or because they couldn't get a part because it was on national back order forever, or because you have this whole year range of trucks that weren't designed to run on ultra low sulfur diesel, and now that's what they're buying at the pump. And does anybody care that their injectors are going to go out quicker? Does anyone care their injection pump's going to go out quicker? Not nationally, I don't think so. But luckily, we have companies that do additives that have, offer a product to be able to do that. But I think of the end user. I think of like the average man or woman out there that drives one of these trucks, and how do they protect their investment? How do they make money with it? I know a ton of people who use their diesel truck to make money and support their family. And I want them to have those answers. I want them to be able to say, oh, I heard this guest on, they make this part that I need, or they can help me, or I can take my truck there and get it fixed, or this is what somebody did to, I don't know, limit their downtime, or, not blow up their transmission as quick, whatever it might be. And so I think with this conversation we've had today, I think we're both passionate about that. We want people to want them to have information, and we want to make sure they can make educated decisions and not just have stuff crammed down their throat and get stuck with a money pit and lose a job or have a truck that sits. I'm sure people that have newer style trucks, couldn't get a part and it sat for 6 months. That's horrible, especially when you get payment.
I worked at Deere during COVID, and we were lucky to get fuel filters for like 2 years. So it was ridiculous. But even like the forums pages, like I follow a bunch of Dodge pages on Facebook, and it's so sad to see like some people this goes back to your thing of like helping people. I'm not saying I'm God's gift to the mechanic industry. I don't have the answers for everything, but it makes me so sad to see these people that are like, hey, I just got into owning a diesel, specifically these like second gens, right? They're like, I just bought it. It's my dream truck. I love it. But like, I'm having these fuel issues and like, I don't know what to do. Can somebody help me? And instead of actually helping these people, you've got 40 people in the comments like, the VP44. And it's like, but how do you know that? You're asking this person, you're just pushing this person to spend $2,300. I know that because I've bought one, on a fucking fuel pump, and you have no idea what their low side fuel pressure is doing. You have no idea what their high side fuel pressure is doing. You have no idea if there's air. You didn't ask them if it has a hard time starting, which would indicate an error, right? Sucking air. You didn't ask them any of this shit. So these people go on these forums, and then they get into this truck, and they've just bought this truck, and they're like, fuck, I just spent like 16 grand on this truck, and now you're telling me I need a $2,300 fucking fuel pump? And it makes me sad because there's so many things that like you can do to avoid things like that are so much cheaper. And I really wish that people were more, specifically on Facebook and things like that, I wish people were a little bit more helpful. And you can tell who's trying to be helpful and who's not really being helpful, but it's not helpful to tell an entire Dodge community of an entire year range of trucks that your pump is trash. That's not helpful. Tell them how to avoid it. That's helpful. I have 2 trucks that are a 2002, and my maroon truck sitting over there, I put a fuel pump on it at 380,000 miles. I owned the truck for at least 80,000 of those miles. And by the looks of the pump, I don't think it was ever replaced. My 2002, I definitely know my other 2002, I know for a fact the fuel pump hasn't been replaced, and it has 230,000 miles on it. So the pump isn't the fucking, and this is totally a little off topic, but like the pump isn't the problem. It's the low pressure fuel system that's feeding it. It's not feeding it enough fuel, so it gets sucked into a vacuum, and then it causes premature wear on top of the ultra low sulfur diesel fuel that you're running. And I wish more people would do their research or be more helpful with stuff like that. And maybe that's where these podcasts come into play, is like, hey, like you said, oh, I heard this person say this, and maybe I can save someone a $2,300 fuel pump. in the future, or this bag stigma that they have. Even the transmissions in these Dodges, yes, they do have some chronic problems. There's a reason every truck in this shop is a 6-speed manual. But if you're not doing burnouts with it and you keep up on your maintenance, it'll probably be fine. But people don't want to tell people that. People just want to be like, oh, you need this. Oh, you just need to go and buy a billet fucking ATS transmission that's 10 grand. That's what you need. And it's like, dude, the truck is worth 16 grand.
That's what I love about podcasts, and like I know you're busy and probably have a busy day, but something that I thought would be really cool to chat with you about today or just discuss is the change in media that has happened. Like when I got into this, and before I ever did the podcast, I worked in the industry. It was almost like there were gatekeepers to media. There was magazines, there was TV shows, cable. Like I haven't had cable TV in I don't even know how long. 8 years, 9, like I don't need it. There's streaming apps, it's like the way that we can access information today. I love it because there is no gatekeeper. Like you could decide next week you want to do an episode on VP44s, and you could have somebody on your podcast who's an expert in it to discuss it, and you can speak with somebody who has tons of experience with it. You can give them those answers. You don't have to rely on like a social media app or a magazine article to tell you, or a TV show that has commercials every 5 minutes to tell you what you should do to your truck. So that's what I love about this kind of media. And it was really cool when I saw that you had started your own podcast, because I think it's important to have conversations in our own way. Like the topics and things you're going to talk about, even though you and I are both talking about diesel, we're going to approach it a little bit different based on our experiences, our preferences for either parts or engines, or just what we've experienced in life. And I think ultimately people who listen, they get so much benefit from that. And there's a lot of times I have a guest on the podcast and they're like up here with their knowledge and I'm down here. And some of the questions I ask are probably dumb, but I'm trying to ask them from somebody like, I don't necessarily understand how, this camshaft is doing what it does. And they get into this whole engineering, like dissertation on it. That didn't exist 10 years ago. You couldn't find that. You'd have to go to some guy's shop, hopefully get him off the phone or off the machine, and have him spend an hour with you to educate you on the different options you have for building an engine or a turbo or sizing the exhaust housing or whatever it might be. So I think it's really cool that you started, your own podcast. I know you're going to do well with it. And I love seeing more people like do what you and I are doing, is trying to educate people, give them information, put it out there so they can make the right decision and not spend money that they don't need to. In my career, I've seen that so many times. Unfortunately, some people sell the truck and never come back to diesel. And they're not listening to a podcast. They're not going to a YouTube channel. They're not following any of us on Instagram. They're not going to a dealership and buying it. They're not calling any of the companies we have on to buy a part because they're off on something else. So I think it's really cool. And that part I'm really excited about, is how we access information as enthusiasts.
Well, the more the merrier when it comes to podcasters. So everybody's like, oh, well, there's lots of podcasters out there, blah, 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 blah. How are you going to compete? And it's like, well, why does it have to be a competition? Why does it even have to be a competition? Like, why can't we just work together and do episodes together, or do talk about things together, or at least get out, like you said, the more information out there, the better. And I really want to have Industrial Injection on my podcast, just to sit down and have them explain for the exact thing that you were talking about. I want them to sit there and explain the fuel system components and things like that, and how they do shit, and things you learn something new every day. I was a diesel mechanic for 8 years, 10 years, if you count the last 3 years of me just working on my own shit. And I did not know that the fuel delivery tubes on these diesel engines, which is what goes through the head and connects the fuel line to the injector, if you buy chrome plated ones, sometimes those flake and send little flakes into the fuel injectors and clog that. I had no idea. And that's like the information I want to get out to people, because that's helped me out a lot, because now I know better. Now I know, right? Like, make sure they're not the chrome plated ones. And I think, yeah, if I can save somebody else a lot of heartache because I fucked it up. And that's like, people say that they like my YouTube channel because I'm real about shit. And like, I will, like, I'm not going to sit there and make you watch me do the wrong thing for like 30 minutes, but I will explain, like, I fucked this up and this is how I figured it out, or this is what I did wrong. And I want other people, I worked professionally as a mechanic. And the one thing I learned is the best, like, information and the best lessons you can give people, especially young mechanics, is here's my mistakes, learn from them. So maybe you don't have to learn from them the same way I did, which was fucking it up.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think collaboration is good. And what I'm about to say, I'm not specifically talking about like the diesel arena. I think just with podcasts in general is the people who listen, you can't hide on an hour-long podcast. You can't hide your personality or your motive. And there's some that are out there where, I mean, put simply, they exist to sell something. And I'm not just talking about diesel. There's ones I listen to because I know they sell stuff and I'm kind of interested in it. But when they really succeed is when the people who listen know you're authentic. They might not agree with you, but they can see the authenticity. We saw that in November when podcasts got politicized, when you had, I mean, it helped win an election. And I think for the public, they saw, wow, this isn't like, I don't know if you've gotten this, but I have over the years, is somebody will say, well, Patrick, what do you do for a living? And I say, well, I do a podcast. And they go, a podcast? Like, this is where you talk, right? And I'm like, I don't really talk that much. I kind of just turn it over to the guest and just ask questions. Like, I want them to talk. I probably talked more on this one than I ever have in 9 years on an episode. But like, they understand now how powerful it is. And I think that when you collaborate and you have conversations like today, we've touched on everything: old trucks, new trucks, emissions, diesel enthusiasts. And now we're talking about podcasts. It's so organic and so authentic that that's what people want. And you didn't get it from legacy media. You didn't get it from print media. You don't get it on TV. You don't get it on radio. And that's just,
on TikTok.
That's what's so cool about it.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right, because anybody can create a persona for 10 seconds in a video, 30 seconds in a video on social media. And even I'm guilty of it, because as you can probably see, like, dude, I went to the fucking Ultimate Call Out Challenge and I was trying to do media for Synergy and Industrial Injection, and everyone was fucking watching me. And I was so nervous about it. I think people like think I'm going to show up because I have a big following, and they think from my videos, because sometimes I do interesting things with my media, and they think I'm just going to show up and be a bitch or be stuck up and be like, whatever. And like, I got this. Actually, I don't got this. I don't have this at all. I'm nervous as fuck. Y'all are fucking watching me. I'm worried. Like, I don't think people see that, but it's hard to see that in like 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Like when I'm making a funny TikTok video about how I'm going to steal your girl, like, I think people get the wrong assumption of like my actual personality. But yeah, that's why I like podcasts too, because you can get in and like see people, like you said, see their real personality. And there are some people that, like, I used to think that there's a few creators that I interviewed for. One was for my podcast for Diesel Laptops. Actually, both of them were for my podcast that I did for Diesel Laptops. And I used to think they were so stuck up. And I did, like, and then I got them. I mean, like, you know what? I'm going to get them on a podcast. And I got him in there and we got talking. We did like a 2-hour motherfucking episode. And I'm like, oh my God. And now these girls are like my best fucking friends on social media. Like, we help each other with parts. We help each other with diagnostics. Like, the one girl specifically, she helped me get this decal in trade for an engine turning tool that I sent her for her 6.7. And like, I helped her with some of her stuff, and we just help each other. And I think that's a great community. Diesel, that's loud as fuck. Stop. But yeah, what? Hold on. What is that? Stop. No. No. Here. An old pill bottle. I don't even know where that. People, come here. Come here. Come say hi. Come here. Come on. Come on. Come on. Here. This is a real star of my social media. I have so many videos of me like working on something or trying to make a video, and this motherfucker is in the background chewing on something.
They always they always find stuff. You're like, where'd you get that? Where'd that even come from? I've never even seen it before.
I found my hammers outside, and it's like, why did you bring my hammers outside? Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's great to have these conversations. I would hope to see, more collaboration in the future. It's not that big of a space, and it's just it helps people. And I'm a lot like you. Like I don't have the following like you do on Instagram or like that. And it's like it was hard at the start to do a podcast because I'm like, how am I going to keep the conversation going? What am I going to ask? What if there's like that awkward silence like in the middle? And finally I just had to say like, screw it. I'm just going to like talk and have a conversation I would want to have with whoever the guest is about whatever we're talking about and just see where it goes. And I consume most of my content now via podcasts, like about other industries I'm interested in, other stuff like that, because they're so organic. And if they start to get like super scripted, I don't know. It just feels like a TV show to me. And I don't like TV shows. I was actually talking about that with a friend recently. Like, and I'm not sure if it was like this for you growing up, but like for me, TV shows were like the big thing. Like whatever it was this 30-minute show. I don't know how many commercials they'd have, but you'd probably get like 22 minutes of content spaced out with things. And like movies used to be cool. And now I can't watch a movie because I'm like, it's only 2 hours. That's not enough to develop the character and the backstory. So like, I need a series. Like this is going to sound
with like 10 seasons.
Yes. Like I know I was late to the party with this, but like Game of Thrones, everyone would always tell me Game of Thrones is awesome. You need to watch it. And I didn't do it for years. And I sat there and I watched the whole thing and I'm like, you need all these seasons to explain the character. If you tried to put that into a 2-hour movie, it would suck. And that's what like movies feel like to me now. And I can't even watch them. I need like Walking Dead. I love Fear the Walking Dead. There's so many different series I love, but they need to be long.
My boyfriend got me hooked on, I don't know if you've seen it, but Dexter.
Yeah, Dexter's good.
Oh, we have watched Dexter. I swear to God, we've watched the first set of seasons like probably 5 or 6 times. And then we watched New Blood. And then we also made sure we watched the most recent one they did where they went back in time when he was younger. And now we are so patiently waiting for Resurrection. But yeah, I was late to the Game of Thrones party too, quite frankly, because everyone kept telling me I need to watch it. And I'm like, tell me how to live my life. I can live without it. And then I started watching. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to consume my life.
Oh, it did. I just power watched. I love to power watch it too. Like I would have hated to have watched it at the time and have to wait a week to watch the episode.
I refuse. I wait until they're all out.
Yeah.
Because I can't.
Yes. And that's what I think is cool about podcasts is there's a lot of development with them, especially with automotive. Like I've pulled stories out of people and I don't have to really pull them, but I guess through the conversation, like one thing I hate about automotive is it's like, there's just people put on a hat and it's just about the car, the truck, the part, the whatever. And I'm like, no, I want to know about you. Like, how did you build this business? Like, when did you get your ass kicked? And when did you think that you weren't going to make it? And how did you make it? What happened? I've heard great stories from people or just things you wouldn't know about like your favorite brand. And you realize the struggle and the trials and tribulations that person overcame to get there. And I'm like, now that's cool. That's what I want to know about. That's kind of the side I gravitate towards is more of the stories and the history and experience.
That's I don't know if I know you're probably familiar with who Diesel Laptops is because I work with them, but I've heard Tyler's origin stories a few times, and he is quite literally the prime example of I started this in my basement and my dad told me I needed to quit and get a real job, right? And now it's like a multi-million-dollar company. Like
Yeah.
now he's like, he's doing very well for himself. His company is extremely successful, obviously successful enough to pay me a monthly wage to, help promote their stuff, which I mean, I even have a Diesel laptop. I use the Diesel app on my phone all the time. Like it's incredible to think that he started from the, like, literally he dropped out, he flunked out of college and dropped out of college and made this little business of diesel repair stuff in his fucking garage. And then when it first got started, his dad's like, "Why the fuck are you doing this? You need to fucking quit. Like, what the fuck? Go work your real fucking job that you have. Like, you make enough money." And Tyler's like, "Nope, I'm gonna stick with it." And now, I mean, he does very well for himself. So, and that's a cool thing about a lot of these companies. A lot of these companies, like, "Oh yeah, I started in my garage." It's like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That
Well,
is awesome.
I would use it for motivation myself. Like, I don't know if there's a perception that like if you start a podcast, you're going to be Joe Rogan, and Spotify is going to like give you this like $1 billion like fee for your library and to host it. It's not glamorous. It's not. There's other things I could do to make a lot more money, and it is something I do because I love it. But there's always times when you think, is this, man, how am I gonna make this? Like the first 2 years, I didn't make anything doing it, like zero,
Yeah.
nothing.
I don't make anything doing it. People think that because I have a lot of following, people automatically assume that if you have a high following, you make money with that following. 99% of the money I make is through sponsorship companies like or partnership with like Hitachi and Diesel Laptops. They literally, like, I have signed contracts for like years and years of monthly payments. That's where I make my money through social media. TikTok, I have like almost 1 million followers. Don't make a fucking dime on it. I had one video go viral. You want to know how much money I made off that? Like $5. Like, my YouTube does okay, but even then, like, some of my best videos have still only made maybe $100 on the video, and that's rare. So like all my podcast episodes that I've done, I think the best one that I have so far was my intro, and that was 27,000 views, and I only made like $50 on that video,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe
There's
100.
well, there's like
But like,
there's a perception that you make a ton of money doing this and you don't. And I wish more of the audience understood that. Like, I'm not sure if you get this like with YouTube, like the ads that they run. They'll say, "Oh, there's too many ads, or there's too many of this, or too many of that." And I'm like, I think the most viewed episode I have on YouTube of a podcast is like 350,000, 400,000 plays. It's not that much money. It's not enough to go like buy a truck. It's not it's not enough to do that. And you get the content for free. Like, I'm not charging anybody to listen to the Diesel podcast or, this conversation. Like, you can just hear it, or any of the guests that you have on and the experience. So I would look towards the guests to give me inspiration sometimes. And there were great ones of like their business literally was going to fold. They had no money, they had tons of tax debt because their person wasn't doing the taxes. Like Lenny Reed from Dynamite Diesel told that story. And I was like, this is inspiring. I want to hear how you did this. And so that's a
I
really,
haven't gotten out of my tax hole. But
it's
yeah, I feel that. It's hard running your own business. People don't think that. Like, people, I'm not going to tell people how much I make per year, but people, like the people that are close to me, like, they see how much I make a year and they're like, "I don't understand how you can make that much and like be behind." And I'm like, "You don't understand that on top of my tax bracket percentage, I also am charged 15% as a self-employment tax. Self-employment tax alone is 15%. people don't see that and they don't understand it. So when they're like, oh, well, you make enough money, you should just do this shit for free, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, or like you could just build a truck off of what you make. And I'm like, not when I owe like fucking $10,000 a quarter to the fucking IRS that I'm behind on, like not when I have a fucking mortgage, especially taxes. That eats up a lot of my fucking income. I got a quote for my taxes this last year and it's 60 grand.
Wow.
So I don't know. Yeah, people are like, "Oh, well, the government just needs to tax or tax the people that make money more." And it's like, okay, but then there's all of us in the middle ground that aren't rich but aren't low class that are getting taxed like a motherfucker to the point where it's almost impossible to become an upper class with how much we're getting taxed. Ridiculous. But people think we make a lot of money, and it's like if you have a business like a self-employment business, you're getting fucked on taxes. So
I think that's where the inspiration and like kind of humanizing the content or the brand or the parts or the logo is so inspiring. I found over the last 5 or 6 years, people have really wanted that too. They want to be inspired. And I think there's a lot of it in automotive, and I never really heard it talked about. It was always like, this is how successful I am, this is how great our part is, this is how awesome and big our building is. I'm like, no, tell me how you got there. Tell me why you almost didn't get there. Like, let's hear that, because tons of people are listening and they might not want to work in diesel. They might have a construction company or a trade or an office, job or an idea. And the lessons translate across all of it. It's not just specific to automotive, but hopefully that's something that comes out more. And I think our podcast space is just hearing those inspiring stories.
well, the only difference, one of my favorite quotes is the only difference between diesel. The only difference between people that succeed and people that fail is the people that succeed tried one more time. And that's where I think in a world full of social media, immediate, like everybody has everything immediately. We have everything like you can order food immediately. Everybody is expected to have success immediately. What they don't understand is all these people that are successful failed more times than you ever even tried.
Yeah.
And it's like a quote I live by is people the only difference between a successful person and a failure is the successful person tried one more time because they failed plenty more times. And it's true. But well, my phone is at not 8%.
Let's get ready to die.
So I don't know if you want to wrap it up but if my screen goes black and I disappear, that's why.
Well, I think what would really be cool is to have you as a guest on our podcast, and I put you like in the guest seat and hear some of your stories, like what I just talked about. And we'll talk about some truck stuff too, and maybe some of those tips like you mentioned of saving money and getting the answer to really fix the problem, not just throwing money at the part. I think it'd be cool to have you on the Diesel podcast to do that. It was really cool to be on here, and I appreciate you reaching out. And I was just like, I don't remember what I was doing, and I saw your message come in, and I've followed you for a long time, and I was like, oh, I want to be on our podcast. This would be so cool to like, talk trucks and talk this different things about automotive. So I appreciate you reaching out to me. It was great to have you on here, and I'll connect with you. We'll set up a time here quick to have you as a guest on the Diesel podcast and continue the conversation. And I'll kind of grill you for truck knowledge and inspiration and things like that.
I'll have my headphones next time.
Well, it was really cool. Like I said, I appreciate you inviting me. It was a great conversation, and look forward to what you're doing with your podcast. And I can't wait to see it continue to grow and get bigger.
Well, thanks. I'm trying.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code TDP2540. It'll get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money and get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, handle designs. And their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So if you're in the market, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code TDP2540 for 40% off MSRP. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters, Tyler Lowe and the 23 Diesel, Cutter Up Rob, Robert, all of other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps. Follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.